They say it's never about the thing itself. It's about what it represents. And I swear to you, this wasn't about a ring. I am 46. I teach high school history in a town that barely remembers its own past, Greenport, New York. A place with salt in its air and grudges in its bones. I don't wear jewelry. Never have. But that ring, the one with the scratched amethyst set in a bent silver band, that one meant something. It wasn't pretty. Wasn't expensive either. Maybe $350 if you're being generous. But it was mine. Not because I bought it, but because my grandmother, the only person in my family who saw me for who I actually was, left it to me. In her handwriting, no lawyer involved. Just a note folded neatly into her Bible, addressed to me, the different grandchild. She gave it to me because I sat with her when she couldn't remember what day it was. Because I didn't roll my eyes when she told the same story 5 times. Because I listened. That's what she said, that I listened. So when my brother Dean, the oldest grandkid by 8 months and the biggest narcissist by miles, showed up 2 weeks after a funeral claiming the ring was his by birthright, I didn't even flinch. I thought it was a joke. But Dean doesn't joke. He files lawsuits. The twist? He lost. And then he lost his mind. And here's the real kicker. It was never about the ring. It was about control. It was about Grandma choosing me. And Dean couldn't stand that someone he spent his whole life looking down on might have meant more to the only person who ever looked at us without keeping score. Dean dragged me to small claims court like it was Broadway, and he was the star. He even wore a suit, the same one he borrowed for Grandma's funeral and never returned. His whole argument was built on a lie. That Grandma told him the ring was a family heirloom meant for the oldest. He said it in that smug, rehearsed tone of his, like he thought the judge would be dazzled. But here's the thing. I had a note, in Grandma's handwriting, dated and signed. It wasn't notarized, but it was real. It said my name. It said the ring was for me. The judge didn't even blink before ruling in my favor. Dean turned red, like he was holding in a scream, and stormed out before the papers were even stamped. I thought that would be the end. It should have been. But Dean wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a visit from a local deputy. Dean had filed a police report, claimed I stole the ring. Said I manipulated an old woman into giving it to me. The deputy was polite, almost embarrassed. He asked for the ring, I handed it over temporarily, and then he left. A week later, the DA declined to press charges. Not enough evidence, they said. Not even close. Dean didn't care. If he couldn't win legally, he'd try to break me another way. That's when the online post started. The internet's a funny place until your own name starts showing up in someone else's smear campaign. It started quietly. One of those local Facebook groups, Greenport Neighbors United, or something just as self-important. Normally, it was just people complaining about recycling pickup and lost dogs. Then one night, my phone buzzed. A friend sent me a screenshot. There was a post from Dean. He didn't use my name, but he didn't have to. He wrote about a sibling who manipulated our dying grandmother into changing her will. Claimed a family heirloom was stolen, that it was meant for the eldest grandchild by tradition, and that this so-called sibling used underhanded tactics to make sure it ended up in the wrong hands. He even tagged the group admin so it wouldn't get deleted. The comments were the worst part. Some strangers jumped in like it was a soap opera, choosing sides based on nothing. One woman I didn't recognize wrote that it sounded just like her own family drama, and that the oldest always gets cheated. Another chimed in, saying if it wasn't notarized, it could easily be faked. People I hadn't seen in years, neighbors, folks from high school, commented with vague things like I knew something was off about him. Then came the DMs. A former colleague messaged me, saying she didn't want to get involved but was concerned after what she'd read. My old boss from the public library emailed to say my name was being thrown around in some pretty serious allegations. Even a parent from a school where I teach reached out, asking if everything was okay at home. At first, I tried to ignore it. I figured people would lose interest and move on to the next local scandal. But Dean didn't stop. He moved beyond Facebook. He started messaging people directly. He sent an email to my ex-wife, accusing me of emotional coercion and hinting that I was dangerously manipulative. He texted my friend Lana, someone I hadn't talked to in over a year, saying she deserved to know the truth about who I really was. That was the moment I realized he wasn't going to let this go. I talked to a lawyer. She wasn't shocked. Said harassment like this is more common than people think, especially in families where one sibling refuses to play the scapegoat anymore. She helped me file for a restraining order. The judge granted on the spot. 6 months. No contact, no social media posts, no third-party communication. The clerk handed me the papers, And I remember thinking how light they felt in my hands for something that took so much out of me to pursue. That quiet I'd been hoping for came back. But it wasn't peace. It was just the absence of noise. And inside that quiet, something darker lived, something that had been building for years. Dean didn't care about the ring. He never did. He cared that she saw me, that she left me something without asking for permission, that she made her choice and it wasn't him. And that kind of resentment, you don't fix it. You outlive it. Funny thing is, before the whole mess with the ring, Dean and I weren't exactly close, but we weren't enemies either. We coexisted. He lived 2 towns over in Mattituck, bouncing between jobs he never kept and relationships that all ended the same way. Bitter, fast, and someone else's fault. I used to think he was just unlucky. Now I see it different. He wasn't unlucky. He was entitled. And the world just kept failing to hand him what he thought he deserved. I used to take his calls. Used to listen to him complain about how hard things were, how people didn't get him, how employers were unfair and women were all the same. And I'd nod, say the right things, offer to help. Not because I believed him, but because that's what family does, right? One winter, he showed up at my place unannounced. Said he was between apartments, asked to crash for a few nights. He stayed 3 weeks, drank all the coffee, never washed a dish, used my car without asking. Left the gas tank empty every time. But I didn't say much. Just figured that's how he was. I kept waiting for him to grow up. He never did. Grandma never talked much about Dean. She loved him, sure. She loved all of us. But I think she saw through him early. Saw how he'd smile when it benefited him. How he turned on the charm when there was something to gain. She didn't buy it. That's what drove him nuts, I think. She saw him clearly, and worse, she saw me just as clearly and liked what she saw. I'd visit her once a week. Even when she stopped remembering my name every time, she'd light up when I walked in. Said I brought peace into the room. Dean visited on holidays, when there were cameras, when people noticed, after she passed, and I found the note. I sat with it for an hour before I told anyone. Just sat there in the quiet of her living. You'd think something like this would stay between us, me and Dean. But family doesn't work like that. Not mine, anyway. After the restraining order was filed, the whispers started. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, just to check in, which was code for, "We heard about the drama and want the inside scoop." Aunt Lori called me and said she didn't want to take sides, but then spent 10 minutes telling me how hurt Dean was and how I should be the bigger man. Said Grandma wouldn't want this kind of tension. I didn't say what I was thinking, that Grandma also wouldn't want her wishes ignored or rewritten because someone didn't get their way. Instead, I told her I wasn't interested in debating it. That didn't go over well. She hasn't called since. Even my mom weighed in. She said she understood, but thought maybe I should just give him the ring to keep the peace. Like peace was something you could buy or trade away. I asked her if she'd read Grandma's note. She hadn't. She didn't want to. Said it wasn't about the note. Said it was about family. That word, family. It gets thrown around like a trump card, like it erases everything. Family means forgive. Family means forget. But what nobody says is that family can also mean guilt. Pressure. A rope around your neck when you're just trying to breathe. I started noticing who stopped calling, who stopped inviting me to things. Christmas came and went, and my name wasn't on the gift exchange list. Someone else brought the pie I always made. I was replaced in silence, not with malice, just absence. And Dean, he milked it, played the victim perfectly. Said I took legal action against him over a misunderstanding. Said I made the whole family choose. But I didn't. I just chose not to let him keep taking. Sometimes, that's all it takes to become the villain in your own family. Saying no. Room, holding this tiny, wrinkled piece of paper like it weighed 100 pounds. She chose me. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. And the moment Dean found out, the very second he saw that I had something she meant for me, something shifted. I saw it in his face. It wasn't just anger. It was panic. Like he couldn't make sense of a world where he didn't automatically get what he thought he was owed. The ring was never the problem. It was just the proof that you'd think something like this would stay between us, me and Dean. But family doesn't work like that. Not mine, anyway. After the restraining order was filed, the whispers started. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, just to check in, which was code for, "We heard about the drama and want the inside scoop." Aunt Lori called me and said she didn't want to take sides, but then spent 10 minutes telling me how hurt Dean was and how I should be the bigger man. Said Grandma wouldn't want this kind of tension. I didn't say what I was thinking, that Grandma also wouldn't want her wishes ignored or rewritten because someone didn't get their way. Instead, I told her I wasn't interested in debating it. That didn't go over well. She hasn't called since. Even my mom weighed in. She said she understood, but thought maybe I should just give him the ring to keep the peace. Like peace was something you could buy or trade away. I asked her if she'd read Grandma's note. She hadn't. She didn't want to. Said it wasn't about the note. Said it was about family. That word, family. It gets thrown around like a trump card, like it erases everything. Family means forgive. Family means forget. But what nobody says is that family can also mean guilt, pressure, a rope around your neck when you're just trying to breathe. I started noticing who stopped calling, who stopped inviting me to things. Christmas came and went, and my name wasn't on the gift exchange list. Someone else brought the pie I always made. I was replaced in silence, not with malice, just absence. And Dean, he milked it, played the victim perfectly. Said I took legal action against him over a misunderstanding. Said I made the whole family choose. But I didn't. I just chose not to let him keep taking. Sometimes that's all it takes to become the villain in your own family, saying no. A few months after it all went quiet. No more posts, no more texts, just this dull, aching silence. I opened the small wooden box where I'd kept the ring. It was still there, still just as ordinary looking as ever. The amethyst clouded at the center. The silver, dulled from age and neglect. If you saw it at a pawn shop, you wouldn't look twice. But to me, it felt heavier than anything else I owned. I turned it over in my hand, ran my thumb along the inside of the band where there was the faintest engraving, initials, a date. The kind of thing you miss if you're not looking closely. I remembered how Grandma used to wear it on a chain, not on her finger. Said her hands were too swollen these days. But I think she just liked keeping it close to her heart. It hit me then what this fight had actually been about. Dean thought it was about inheritance, about fairness. But for me, the ring wasn't about being chosen. It was about being known. All my life, I'd been the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who made sure things got done without being asked. And I guess part of me always believed that if I just kept doing the right thing, someone would notice. Grandma noticed. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was proof that someone saw me, that in a family full of noise, someone heard me. Dean never wanted the ring until he knew I had it. That was the part that stung the most. He didn't care what it was. He cared that it was mine, that it was given freely, without performance or payoff. Just love. And he couldn't stand that. I never wore it. I couldn't. But I also couldn't put away again. So I placed it on the windowsill in my kitchen, where the light hits it around 3 p.m. every day. It's not much, but it's something. And every time I see that dull little gem glow for just a second in the afternoon sun, I remember who I am. Not the villain, not the problem, just someone who got tired of being quiet. I never got to say a proper goodbye to Grandma. Not the kind where you sit at a bedside and whisper thank yous into the quiet. She went in her sleep. Peacefully, they said. I hope that's true. The funeral was strange. Not because of the service. That was fine, simple, what she would have wanted, but because of what it revealed. Grief, I've learned, has a way of stripping people down. You see who they are when the spotlight isn't on them, when there's nothing left to gain. Dean cried loud enough for the whole church to hear. He clutched her photo like it owed him something. People said he was heartbroken. I think he was angry. Not at her dying, but the quiet fact that she'd left with a piece of herself given to me. Not him. I stood in the back, near the door. Didn't speak. Didn't want to. The moment didn't feel like mine. Everyone was performing. Polite tears. Scripted eulogies. I wanted to scream, not out of sadness, but out of frustration. How could they not see who she really was? How could they turn her memory into some glossy, palatable thing? I slipped out before the reception. Drove to the small diner where she used to take me as a kid, Molly's, just off Route 25. Sat in her usual booth. Ordered her usual tea. No lemon, 1 sugar. The waitress didn't recognize me, but that didn't matter. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to remember. I pulled a note out of my wallet. Still folded, edges soft from being handled too much. I read it again. Not because I forgot the words. They were etched into me now, but because I needed her voice in the room. Even if just in ink. That was my goodbye. Not a speech. Not a sob. Just a booth, a cup of tea, and the memory of someone who, in a family full of performances, gave me something real. I thought it was over. That after the court case, the police report, the online mudslinging, and the restraining order, Dean would finally let it drop. But people like him, they don't know how to let go. Not when they've built their whole identity around being wronged. The email came late, almost midnight. A single line in the subject. You win. I should have ignored it. I knew better. But I opened it anyway. He wrote that he was letting go of the ring, like it was some grand sacrifice. Said he hoped I enjoyed Grandma's pity gift, and that he was done with the whole family. But I could tell he wasn't. Not really. You don't write 5 paragraphs to someone you've supposedly cut out of your life. The part that got to me wasn't the insults, it was the twist. Near the end, he wrote that he was moving, leaving the state. Said he didn't feel welcome anywhere in Greenport anymore. That everyone took your side. And for a second, just a second, I felt something like guilt. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I knew how lonely it is to be on the outside, even if you put yourself there. But then I remembered all the chances he had, all the times I opened my door, all the times Grandma did. He didn't just burn bridges. He soaked them in gasoline and threw the match himself. A week later, I heard from our cousin Janine that Dean had packed up and gone south. Florida, maybe. Somewhere with no winter and plenty of people charm. She asked if I felt better now that he was gone. I didn't know how to answer. Relieved? A little. Sad? Maybe. But not for him. For the time we lost. For the fact that somewhere along the way, brother stopped meaning what it used to. Sometimes I wonder if that ring cursed us. But deep down, I know the truth. It didn't ruin anything. It just showed us what was already broken. After Dean left, everything got quieter. Not just the drama, but the air around me. I didn't realize how much of my mental real estate he had been occupying until it was finally vacant. But peace isn't always warm. Sometimes it's cold. Sometimes it sits in the house like a ghost you can't talk to. Family didn't rush back into my life either. No big reunion. No apologies. Just nothing. Aunt Lori still sent a Christmas card, but this year it came in signed. My mother called on my birthday, but only after I sent hers first. Conversations were careful now. Polite. Empty of substance. Like we were all afraid of stepping on broken glass. I kept teaching. Same classroom, same lectures, different kids. Some days, they'd ask me about my own family, like teenagers do, casual, clueless. I'd shrug and say, it's complicated. They always nodded. Even at 16, they already understood that word carried weight. The ring stayed on the windowsill. I started looking at it differently. Not as a reminder of a fight, but as proof of something small and private. That once someone saw who I was and thought that was enough. Not impressive. Not perfect. Just enough. One Sunday, I drove past Grandma's old house. New people live there now. They painted the shutters blue. Hung wind chimes from a porch. It looked smaller than I remembered. Most things do when you grow up. I didn't stop. Didn't knock. Just sat across the street for a while with the windows rolled down. The wind was sharp, smelled like salt and rain. It made my eyes water, though I told myself it was the breeze. That was the thing about grief. It doesn't always cry. Sometimes it just sits in the passenger seat beside you, quiet, familiar, and heavy. I thought about Dean, wondered if he was still angry, or if he'd found someone new to resent. I wondered if he ever told the truth to anyone, even to himself. Then I pulled away from the curb and drove home. I didn't feel better, but I felt real. And sometimes, that's enough. I never showed the note to anyone. Not my mother, not Aunt Lori, not even the lawyer. I didn't need it to prove anything after the ruling, not legally, anyway. But I kept it, folded it back into that soft, worn square, and tucked it behind the lining of my wallet. I think I needed it more than I realized. Not to show, but to hold. Quietly. Like a secret prayer. Life kept moving. I stopped expecting reconciliation. That's a trap. I think, waiting for people to wake up and suddenly treat you right. They won't. And even if they do, the damage has already taught you to flinch. I learned to enjoy the stillness. Sunday mornings in the kitchen with a good cup of coffee. Slow walks through the old trail near Silver Lake. I saw people less, but I felt less alone. The ring stayed where it was, on the sill. But one day, without really planning it, I took it down and slipped it into my pocket. Wore it there the whole day. Never put it on. Just kept it close. I don't know why. Maybe it was a bad day. Maybe I needed to feel like she was still around. That night, I pulled out an old photo album. One of the few things I'd saved from her house before it sold. There she was, young, strong-eyed, holding a baby I didn't recognize. Could have been Dean. Could have been me. She looked proud, either way. There's something strange about seeing your family in black and white. They seem more real, somehow. Like people you could meet at a bus stop, not just ghosts you inherit guilt from. I don't know if Dean ever saw that side of her. I don't know if he wanted to. Some nights, I still feel that old anger flare up. Not rage, just that quiet throb of unfairness. Like something unresolved tapping on the back door of your mind. But it doesn't rule me anymore. It passes. Because I've learned that some battles don't end with victory. They end when you choose to stop swinging. A year passed. No messages. No court dates. No family drama. At least none that had my name on it. Just the quiet rhythm of ordinary life. And in that quiet, I started to rebuild. I got back into cooking. Picked up an old hobby, woodworking, something Grandma always encouraged. She used to say people like us needed to use our hands when our hearts got too loud. I made a small jewelry box one weekend out of cedar and brass hinges. I didn't plan it, but when it was done, I placed a ring inside. It felt right, like closing a chapter without tearing the page. There's still distance in the family. I don't get invited to every birthday. Some cousins don't respond to my texts, but I've stopped trying to fix what doesn't want mending. You can't carry both your peace and their expectations. You have to choose. Some mornings, I still catch myself glancing at the ring box before I head out the door. Not to check if it's there, I know it is, but just to remember that I was seen, that I mattered to someone once, and that it's okay to hold on to something small if it kept you from disappearing. Dean never reached out again. Maybe that's a mercy. Maybe it's a loss. I don't know. I think some questions are meant to stay unanswered. I walk a little lighter these days, not because the pain is gone, but because I finally set it down, right where it belongs. We don't always get the family we want, but if we're lucky, we get someone, just one person, who sees us as we are. And sometimes, one person is enough.